Okay, everybody, let's review what we talked about today. So we talked about these theorems of algebra. They were right out of our book, but theorem 1 basically says what we know. If you have x any power of n, whatever this power is, that's how many roots you have. So for instance, x squared has 2 answers, x cubed has 3 answers, x fourth. So we know that the power of n tells us how many roots. We know that. Theorem 2 tells us they come in pairs. So if one answer is plus an i, then the other one's got to be a minus i. So I gave 2 examples, 3 plus 2i and 3 minus 2i. Okay? And again, we knew that too. That was the second theorem. They come in pairs. Same thing with square roots. They come in pairs, right? So if you have like a plus square root of b, it has to have another one, a minus square root of b, and that's called a conjugate, okay? And then theorem 4, we knew if it was odd, every odd graph is going to have to go through the x-axis at least once. So if it's an odd power, you'll have at least one real root. We knew that too. And now this is kind of weird because I learned a new one. So if you don't know the roots, you can find the sum of them by taking the second coefficient divided by the first coefficient and making it negative. And then if you want the product of the roots, you can take the last, the constant, divided by the first coefficient, and if it's odd, it'd be the negative, okay? And then we did some problems with that, okay? So let me show you. So again, to review what we did, the kids did that on the notes, same exact notes as what we did in our reading. There they are. And then on the very next page, we looked at some problems, okay? So we talked about this formula, which I'll talk about when we get down here, okay? So example 1, we know how to do example 1. If we have a root of negative 4, it came from x plus 4. If we have a root of 3, it came from negative 3, okay? And that would be a polynomial. If we FOIL it out, we'd have an x squared plus 1x minus 2, okay? Example 2, well, if that's a root, then that's got to be the second root, okay? And then we know together they make both roots. So now to get the original equation, the original quadratic, I'm going to use this formula. X squared minus sum of the x plus the products. So to get the sum, I added my roots. That plus that makes 4. So the 4 goes there. And then to find the product, I multiplied my roots and I FOILed it out. I wound up with 13. That goes there. So this quadratic will have these 2 roots. If you did the quadratic formula, you'd find it, okay? Example 3, it's cubic. I already have x equals 2. That's a real root. That goes right there. We know that. X plus 2, that's done. We have an x equals 1 plus square root of 3. We know the other one has got to be an x minus square root of 3, so because they come in pairs, we know that. And then I use my formula, my x squared minus my sum of my roots plus my product. So if I wanted the sum, I added them. And I got 2. So I put my 2 right there. That's the formula. Now if I want the product, I multiplied them, okay? So I multiplied them out, and I wound up with a negative 2 if I FOIL it. And I put my negative 2 there, 2 right there. So this quadratic, if I use the quadratic formula, would give me these 2 roots, and of course we know that would give me that, okay? So that's kind of fast, kind of going through it quickly, but that is the answer, okay? All right, I will see you tomorrow.